Hey folks, Ace is here. So around mid of January of this year, I earned my golden dice. You do that by completing a run of Baldur's Gate 3 on honor mode without reloading. I recorded the full run and have uploaded it here on my channel. Now I've unlisted the videos, but anyone can access them through a link to the playlist in the description of this video. I unlisted them because it's really not the kind of video I want YouTube recommending to people for my channel. I'm not sure how interesting it's going to be to really watch. I just uploaded the run because I wanted to prove that I actually did this. So it's more here for reference than as something I think is really enjoyable. However, a lot of people have been asking for footage of me playing the game, so here is several hours of me doing that. The reason I thought it was necessary to prove I did this is because honor mode is extremely easy to cheat. Now, this recorded run doesn't prove I didn't cheat, but I hope that the gesture will at least convince you that I have nothing to hide. And I mean, honestly, for people who do end up watching the run, they will see something that is quite messy and imperfect. If I was going to cheat a recording, I would cheat a much better one than this. Just for example, the honor mode patch, I believe it was patch 5, ended up resetting my karmic dice setting, and I did not notice till after the run was complete. And honestly, when I saw it while I was reviewing the footage, my heart dropped. Because, yeah, for me, playing with karmic dice really just invalidates the run. And so, anyways, I'm hoping admitting this will prove to you that I'm trustworthy. And honestly, I still think the run is good, even with all of that. I completed the entire run in around 7 to 8 long rests. I think it was 7, but I may have miscounted one. And in 7 revivifies. Still unacceptably high in my opinion, but I think a lot of people will find that impressive and could learn a lot from it. For folks who don't really care about watching the full run, this video will cover the interesting question, which is, how did I do the run? Right? I mean, basically, what party composition did I build, and how did I use that composition in combat? I've been wanting to do a full party composition and fight breakdown video for a while, and so this is the perfect opportunity. If you are interested in it, stay tuned, because we're diving in, starting with my Tav build, Odda the Underqueen. Odda the Underqueen is a Paladin 6, Bard 6 build. This build is the ultimate late game power fantasy. It literally does everything you want a build to do in the game, and it does it all at a high level. Now, obviously, Paladin Bard multis are a very common build strategy in Baldur's Gate 3. But the builds that I see most talked about are Paladin 2, Swords Bard 10 builds. With the 10-2 split, you get pretty much everything that is overpowered on a Swords Bard, but then you add smites. And it's honestly a great build. I have nothing bad to say about it, but regulars of this channel do know that I value Paladins much more for their support auras than I do for their smites, although smites are great. By going Ancients Paladin 6, Lore Bard 6, I get access to the overpowered Aura of Protection and a decently scaled Healing Radiance. I also get extra attack on Paladin now, which means it's not as important to go with Swords Bard specifically. Going Lord Bard instead will snag me Magical Secrets and Cutting Words. And I mean, of course, you also get Song of Rest, which is practically mandatory for any run that is seriously aiming on reducing long rest. Honestly, it's so good. I try to restrict myself to only taking one Song of Rest in my party composition, and this is the build for that in this one. I use Magical Secrets on Sanctuary and Counterspell. For itemization, the obvious angle for a build like this is Helmet of Arcane Acuity plus Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, which is very well known, especially for regulars of this channel. The Bard's Cantrip Vicious Mockery gives us a spell slot free resource to utilize Mystic Scoundrel every round. And then if we actually do want to spend a spell slot, we have bangers like Command, Hold Person, and Fear. So, amazing build for utilizing Arcane Acuity and Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. After that, we want to itemize to shore up the big weakness of this build, which is its low initiative. It has low initiative because we can't afford to take alert. Basically, any smite build needs Savage Attacker, it's just too efficient not to take. And then our remaining feat we want to spend on something which boosts our charisma, because we also get insane efficiency from Charisma with Aura of Protection. And so it's a rare build where there honestly isn't a place for alert. And it's fine, actually. You can have one build in your party not take alert if you itemize them with the initiative boosting items. In the case of this build, I go Yuan-ti Scale Mail, Gloves of Dexterity, and Sentinel Shield, and that'll net us an acceptable +8 to our initiative. Actually, by late game, I replace Yuan-ti Scale Mail with Elegant Studded Leather, and that will get us a +9, which is very good. The only other essential item to discuss is our main weapon. The obvious choice, which we can get as soon as we hit the lower city, is the Diva Mace. Or at least you could do that back when I was recording this run. Diva Mace synergizes perfectly with Savage Attacker. Before that, there aren't really any spectacular options. I use Valor Alluve and then Blood of Lathander, but you can use whatever you like, really. And then skills. For skills, grab anything useful that isn't Deception and Performance, because we will get those with the Actor feat. And then we also get Expertise from the Bard class. I use my Expertise pips on Persuasion and Athletics, but I wish I chose Sleight of Hands instead of Athletics, just for the quality of life boost of passing lockpick checks quicker. Anyways, once it all pans out, here's what we will have late game. For striking, Savage Attacker, Diva Mace, Smites, and Extra Attack. This is strong, reliable damage round over round, as well as really good upfront burst if we're willing to spend those spell slots smiting. For controlling, amazing, we have Helmet of Arcane Acuity, Cutting Words, Bound of the Mystic Scoundrel. Smiting will proc Arcane Acuity with the helmet for some reason. So if you smite enough times, when you have haste, you can fully stack Arcane Acuity in one round for those boss fights. For support, we have Aura of Protection, Cutting Words, and Healing Radiance if you go Oath the Agents. I assume you're going Oath the Agents in all of my build notes, but in the actual build I ran, I ended up changing to Oath of Vengeance just for story reasons. Oath of the Ancients is just better in every way, but, sometimes I actually do make decisions for lore. Finally, durability. This build has Aura of Protection, Shield, Amulet of Greater Health. Sorry, that's not the shield spell, but you wield a shield. Amulet of Greater Health and Durgar Resilience. By level 12, fully buffed, I had 23 armor class, 194 hit points, and buffs to every single saving throw, sometimes multiple buffs. You could probably tell that this is a highly support-oriented build, and specifically it is adding a ton of durability and healing compared to other Paladin and Bard builds. I said before that Baldur's Gate 3 favors offense more than defense, and that is true. However, it also means folks tend to overlook defensive strategies. I have played a lot of no reload runs in a lot of different CRPGs, and one thing I've learned is that defense and healing are run savers. The reason is that when your build is squishy, you basically have less time and resources to recover when you make a mistake, and that means offensive squishy builds are usually better in a perfect run, but runs are never perfect. And if you make a mistake, you sometimes don't have enough time to fix that mistake by the time you realize you made it. So it's always a good general strategy to build. It's always a good general strategy to build for damage. Don't get me wrong. You want to build damage, but you don't have to maximize damage in every way. In other words, build a solid, efficient damage strategy, but don't worry about stacking every +1 bonus possible. Sometimes it's worth trading that +1 bonus for something else that will keep you alive. And in the case of this build, the highly efficient damage strategy is the combination of Smite, Savage Attacker, and late game Diva Mace. That is enough for damage. I don't need to sacrifice Aura of Protection and Healing Radiance scaling to add to it. So that's the fundamental philosophy of the build. And that is how the build works mechanically. Narratively, the combination of a Holy Warrior Paladin with a Poetic Bard made me think of a kind of King David character. That is King David from the books of Samuel in the Hebrew Bible. The noble background fit perfectly, so I RP'd as an exiled queen of an Underdark Durgar kingdom, thus the Underqueen moniker. I also just think Underqueen sounds super cool. To fit the concept, I went Oath of Vengeance instead of Oath of Ancients. It was cool, but again, for your build, I recommend Oath of Ancients. It is better, and in the build notes, I assume Oath of Ancients. Like I've said, it was a strong build, but in retrospect, now that I've finished the playthrough, there are some things that I would do differently. Basically, I'd go Paladin 8, Bard 4. The Bard 6 variant nets us Font of Inspiration and Magical Secrets, but we lose Aura of Warding plus a feat. When I planned the build, I thought it was worth a trade, and it is worth a trade, I think, if you're going to itemize around Radiating Orb and take Spirit Guardians with Magical Secrets. However, I needed the Radiating Orb items on other members of the party, so Magical Secrets ended up not being nearly as impactful as Aura of Warding plus a feat would have been, I think. In my composition reference sheet, linked in the description, I have the Paladin 8 Bard 4 build that I wished I used. Or you can use the actual build I used in the run if you prefer. So that is Odda the Underqueen. Next up in our build composition is Queen Guard Karlarch. This is a Barbarian 8 Cleric 4 build. Honestly, this was a build I'd been hyped to try for a while because it was highly experimental. I don't see people talking about this combination very often. And it performed really well. I'm very happy with the way it performed. It's honestly changing the way I think about the game, which is exciting. So as soon as I outlined the Underqueen in my plan for this run, I knew I wanted to build a tanky composition. It is a common misconception that good compositions need to be balanced around, like have a balanced amount of damage and defense. Very often, you will just get increasing returns the more of something you stack up. Classic example, if you have a lot of healing in a composition, healing is mathematically more efficient on targets that already have high defense and damage reduction. I mean, it's not all math, you need to contextualize it, but I just had a hunch that if I prioritized durability in this composition, I'd be able to reliably tank enough damage that I'd need less long rests in the long run, and I think it kind of worked out that way. So with that in mind, every queen needs a bodyguard, so Odda the Underqueen gets Queen Guard Karlarch. The gist of this build is that barbarians are highly durable strikers that carry hard in the early game, but tend to fall off late game. I wanted to make a barbarian a little more relevant in Act 3 by utilizing some of the S tier concentration-free spells that clerics get, in particular Sanctuary, Create Water, and most importantly, Warding Bond. Okay, think for a moment about how well the Barbarian kit and the spell Warding Bond synergize with each other. Warding Bond is an incredible buff with the sharp drawback of making your caster take more damage and risk losing concentration. And it's exclusive to a class that is not particularly durable and that is all about maintaining concentration, usually Spirit Guardians. Barbarians, by contrast, are a class that is extremely durable at the steep cost of not being able to concentrate while they're raging. You see, I mean, they harmonize better than Simon and Garfunkel. So yeah, the build is a pretty straightforward goal. I just have to make the most unkillable barbarian I can make in 8 levels, and then take 4 levels of cleric to cast Warding Bond on everyone else in the party. Done. So what is the most unkillable barbarian build? Well, my first idea was Bearheart with Aspect of Stallion and Boots of Speed. Aspect of Stallion will give you 2 extra barbarian level temporary hit points when you dash. Boots of Speed lets you dash as a bonus action every round. Bearheart doubles the effectiveness of the temp HP with its damage reduction. It's simple, elegant, effective, and unfortunately, it does not work. When I tested it, I discovered Boots of Speed does not trigger Aspect of the Stallion for some reason, and honestly, it ended up being okay because I needed those Boots of Speed on another build in this composition we'll talk about later. You can end up reliably proccing Aspect of the Stallion every round anyways if you trade Bearheart for Eagleheart. It's not as insane durability, but it's good enough. Now for items, we also had 2 potential build paths. We could go Skin Burster for damage reduction, or Sword of Chaos plus Periaptive Wound Closure for healing. I think both are fine. In this run, I ended up going the healing route, mostly because I just like the Sword of Chaos better. Also, I've noticed with Skin Burster, if you stack a lot of damage reduction on a build, enemies end up not targeting you, and I actually did want this build to draw a fair amount of aggro. So once I had Sword of Chaos plus Periaptive Wound Closure on lock, I knew I wanted to add Ring of Regeneration plus Whispering Promise as a combo as well. This will give us Perma Bless on Whispering Promise, and the combination of Perma Bless with Autozor Protection meant that I'm also really durable when it comes to saving throws as well. For armor, I use Adamantine Scale. Adamantine Scale falls off as far as AC goes late game, but AC really does not matter in this build because it can tank all of those hits anyways. And really, the lower AC, I hoped, would incentivize enemies to attack me, and then I could spread a lot of reeling from the armor. I also dealt a fair amount of acid retaliation with the Flesh Melter Cloak. Lastly, for boots, I use Speedy Light Feet because I want to be dashing every round anyways. You could also do Linebreaker boots if you prefer, both are good. And those really are all the key build-defining items. For everything else, you can just look at the spreadsheet I have linked. I think I just prioritized damage and initiative. For feats, I took Great Weapon Master to carry early game, I took Athlete, and I took Sentinel in that order. Barbarians get Alert Light at level 7, so I didn't need to take the alert feat on this build. The other 3 builds in this composition are all giga-optimized monstrosities where I used sometimes full class S-tier classes or combinations of S-tier classes. So I was worried that in contrast, this build, which is mostly just Barbarian, would feel weak by comparison. But honestly, it held its own the entire game. Like I said above, Great Weapon Master Barbs, I mean, they carry so hard in Act 1. So that was awesome. Act 1 is honestly one of the hardest acts in an honor mode run. And then even late game, Karlarch was able to deal a reliable 60-ish damage around without really needing any special attention or resources. Now 60-ish damage isn't good, but it's not terrible either. And this is on a build that's already soaking an absurd amount of damage, was never in danger of dying, brought 4 extra casts of Sanctuary and Create Water per long rest. I mean, honestly, overall, I am starting to consider that this might actually be a top tier support striker build, which is exciting and cool because I don't know of anyone else who's really trying it. Alright, so we've done Odda the Underqueen, Queenguard Karlarch. Next up is Selunite Shadowheart. This is a full class Life Cleric build. This one will be much shorter because it's all really straightforward. Spirit Guardians plus Radiant Orb items net you one of the strongest striker/controller builds in the game. A lot of people know about it. It's very standard. I usually go Light Cleric for this build, but at this point in my composition, as I've said, it was becoming really durable, and I kind of wanted to try out Life Cleric. I had a lot of great targets for the healing. I used to run Life Cleric a lot in early access, but since full release, I hadn't run it that much, and I just felt like going Life Cleric instead of Light. Honestly, I think both work. Just some notes on how I play this build. I always use Boots of Speed on any character that wants to be casting Spirit Guardians. More movement speed means more targets hit with the spell. It's really pretty straightforward math. For my weapon, I used Morning Frost for most of the game. Ray of Frost lowers enemy movement speed even more on top of Spirit Guardians, and catching the occasional chilled status can be fight changing. In Act 3, I picked up Staff of the Cherished Necromancy to spam upcasted Inflict Wounds. Once you lock that in, it's a good idea to switch to Elixir Bloodlust instead of the default Elixir Peerless Focus, because now you're killing enough targets, and when you're casting 2 upcasted Inflict Wounds and Spirit Guardians, we're talking hundreds of damage around, and that's when this build really comes a striker class as well. Finally, sometimes Radiating Orb builds will use Coruscation Ring plus Cal's Glow Ring. I prefer to have those on my Eldritch Blaster build, so I save those for my Gale build in this run, which we can turn to now. For Gale, the last member of the composition, I call this the Master of Missiles build. It is Wizard 10, Sorcerer 2. This build is actually a failure. I seriously borked it up in the run. It still ended up working really well, but I wouldn't actually recommend the build that I played in the game. The build I recommend is the one I actually have in the notes link below. So, first, what was the idea of the build? The idea was to take Eldritch Blast on an Evocation Wizard with Potent Robe. I've talked about this before, but Evocation Wizards can add their Intelligence modifier to Eldritch Blast rays. Potent Robe will allow you to add your Charisma modifier. If you build for both Intelligence and Charisma, you can stack up a solid plus 7 to 8 damage per ray on a class that also gets the full use of the Wizard's OP spell list. In other words, it's just a build that's slightly worse at Eldritch Blasting than Warlock, but can also cast Curriculum of Strategy and Globe of Invulnerability. The reason I added 2 Sorcerer was to get Quicken Cast, which allows me to cast a whole nother 3 rays on a bonus action. Now, astute listeners will know that's not actually possible, but it is what I had in mind. I just forgot that it wasn't possible. Anyways, we'll get to that in a bit. So here's how it all went wrong. First, I triggered some sort of bug during the Rescue the Tieflings quest that prevented me from actually rescuing them, and I just wasn't able to complete the quest. I don't consider this my fault. It's just the game was bugged that patch. The result was I wasn't able to get Potent Robe, so that was a big hit. Second, I forgot that sorcerers don't get Quicken Spell till level 3. In my head, I got it mixed up with Twin Spell, which you can get at level 2. So the plan was to cast another Eldritch Blast late game with my bonus action, but that's not possible. So I ended up giving up a feat, and I got pretty much nothing out of the exchange. That said, the build was still fire. Honestly, it just turns out that Hat Fire Acuity is all you really need to make a Wizard/Sorcerer build insanely strong. In the composition reference sheet I link below, I have how I actually would make this build correctly. Basically, just don't dip Sorcerer, go full class Wizard. Equip gear that boosts your spell attacks like Coruscation Ring, Callous Glow Ring, Marco Heshkir, Spine Shudder Amulet, Boots of Stormy Clamor, etc. In the last fight of the game, I one-shot the Emperor with a single cast of Curriculum Strategy. It was pretty cool.
Execution.
Alright, let's actually dive in and see some fight examples now. This first one will be from Act 2. It's me fighting Balthasar. I always fight Balthasar the first time you meet him when he's kind of in his lair. If you choose the second time, when you're fighting him by the Night Song, there's always a danger that the large ghoul will knock you off the cliff, and that is an insta-kill and a Revivify use, and I'm trying to minimize those as much as possible. This is the safest and best area to fight him, so I just pick a fight with him instantly. Now, the reason I am choosing this fight is because I think it's a good example of how this composition works once everything kind of clicks for it. Because in Act 1, there's a lot of difficult fights, but a lot of the strategy of this composition in Act 1 is just getting Svartalbe's Woundseeker on Karlarch, getting a instance of Bless on her in some way, and just letting her run all over the map and kill everyone, preferably in a surprise round before they have a chance to act. By mid-Act 2, you can kind of see all of the pieces of the composition click together. That makes the most interesting analysis. So I'm starting out with Gale here. You can see in my initiative, all 3 members of my party won initiative, except for the 1 member that is unable to take alert. But still, 3 people winning is pretty good. And I'm going to start off with Gale casting Scorching Ray. I'm just picking a target that is the rays are most likely to hit, because the damage doesn't matter as much as hitting with them does. Then I'm going to haste Gale. I accidentally mistook the water for the haste potion. And I'm going to try to CC as many priority targets as possible with his now stacked Arcane Acuity. Against Undead, the best CC spell is, of course, the sleep version of Glyph of Warding. There, I hit all 3 targets, 2 of the priority targets in this encounter. Switching over to Shadowheart now, I'm going to want to use Spirit Guardians and stack as much Radiating Orb as I can. Although she doesn't want to damage the sleeping targets because it's not an attack roll, so there's no chance to crit, and that would be a waste of the sleep condition. Alright, now I want to kill Balthasar with the 1 guaranteed crit I get while he is asleep. I'm going to do Thunderous Smite, I believe. and combine that with Divine Smite to deal as much damage on a single attack crit as possible. I think I kind of low-rolled this, to be honest, but he's still almost dead, so it works. Alright, back to Gale. I've got lots of sleeping targets. Really, at this point, I feel like the fight is won because Balthasar is almost dead. You can see I always dash on my cleric. It's just reaction habit. But what I really want to do is attack with Karlarch first. You can see I didn't kill Balthasar. I was trying to kill him so I could proc my bonus action attack with Great Weapon Master. But the fact that I lucked out and crit means I can put those attacks on the ghoul, and I know that Balthasar is low enough that I can guarantee the kill with Spirit Guardians here. I just want to avoid the large ghoul, again, because I want to not waste the sleep condition with a crit. There you go. I get the crit off now. They get off some lucky paralyzes here, but the fight's over at this point. It's just about killing them and taking as little damage in the process. So the thing about this big ghoul here is his movement is pretty low. So as long as I have Spirit Guardians in between him and my party, he really can't get to the backline. In fact, he really can't get to anybody. Especially when I do all kinds of slowing effects like Hamstrung. It really doesn't matter about maximizing damage at this point. It's just about dealing damage while keeping him in a position where he can't deal any damage to us. And yeah, that's pretty much the fight. I don't think either him or Balthasar ever get off an attack or spell in this fight. Okay, he's low enough. I could probably just finish him off with a smite attack. And that's it. Alright, big spoilers for this next one, guys. I'll just give you a second to pause. This is a fight in Act 3, spoilers incoming, against Sarevok and the Murder Tribunal. It is not a difficult fight. I usually fight it pretty early in Act 3. In fact, I believe I'm level 10 in this particular one. Alright, if we keep playing now, I think this fight is a good example showing the power of Arcane Acuity, Radiating Orb, and just crowd control in general. Just like always, I'm going to cast Spirit Guardians, dash, and run my Cleric in to spread Radiating Orb to as many priority targets as possible. They get off a lucky crit, but you can see it does basically no damage because I've now reached the point of the game where Karlarch is casting Warding Bond on everyone. So maybe level 11, I think that is. Just like last time, I want to stack up Arcane Acuity, but they counterspell. Now I'm going to refocus my aggro on the character that's casting counterspell on me, because that can actually mess me up.
Covered. The hammer's gonna fall.
Just try to kill this target, like I said.
For the ages.
Sarevok's going to get in there. So that was 8 damage, that was 6 damage, very low damage, and that is the power of Warding Bond at this point of the game. Alright, that target's dead. Each time I kill one of these lesser targets, it's actually giving Sarevok a boost to his armor class. And I just don't really care, because again, that's the power of Arcane Acuity, is as much as he can boost his armor class, I can boost my accuracy on spell attacks that much more. So yeah, there are these knights. Earlier I threw a Glyph of Warding Sleep there to try to stop them, but as you can see, it basically did nothing. I could have just ignored that step, and I will next time I do this fight. Alright, so this is the round where things really start to change. Gale is still hasted. There you go. Stack up. I have 9 Arcane Acuity at this point. And I'm going to cast Sleet Storm. Sleet Storm is the spell with the wide enough area of effect that I can actually block targets from reaching me. And now those knights are completely cut off from the fight. And at this point, it's just about dealing the damage. I think I messed this one up. I actually think I can get her with the reach weapon without stepping on the ice, but that's not true. However, Odda has the boots that prevents me from slipping on the ice, so she's safe. Now I believe Sarevok's AC is something like 28, well into the 20s, now that I've killed the 3 targets. Yeah, you can see the knights cannot join the fight. There is a 0% chance that they get through that ice storm, that sleet storm, with the arcane acuity that Gale has stacked up. So I think I use Acid Splash here because it's a save attack, which means it's more likely to hit targets with high AC. It's one of the rare places where I actually use this spell. And you can see he hits, does a massive 7 damage. Yep, that's Warding Bond.
My faith will protect me. Got to move.
I believe I deliberately proc the attack of opportunity here so that Gale can run away. And he still has a 95% chance of hitting all of his attacks, even against the fully AC buff Sarevok. Luck out with both of those hits, actually. That is Radiating Orb. He just misses all of his attacks. I guess he's immune to paralysis there. Doesn't really matter. Hideous Laughter, no chance to resist because, again, I have 10 stacks of Arcane Acuity. The Knights can't join the fight, and at this point they're just sacks of meat to beat on. And that's it. Alright, for this last one, guys, I am going to be showing you a fight that's not really a good showcase of the team composition in particular, but just good tactics and just some really, really sweet damage numbers in a boss fight at the end of the game. This is with all of the builds fully at level 12 and with most of the important gear I use. So it gives you an example of the late game power. Now this fight is, spoilers everybody, against Viconia and the Sharites in the House of Grief. I've heard people say this is a difficult fight because you will actually start the fight here, and if you rush forward or if you don't prioritize initiative, the fight can be quite difficult. But if you're moving first, like I am, and you kite your units back to these steps, you're going to see the enemy will gather at the bottom here, and it makes AoE attacks highly efficient, and it makes this fight a breeze. So I'll probably skip ahead here a little bit so you can see. So yeah, you can already see them clustering at the bottom of these stairs. And this is where I hit them with a classic Create Water. And I think I use Cone of Cold here. You'll get to see some really sweet numbers. Look at this, guys. 92, 94, 88, 98, 80. Maybe someone can add all these up to see how much that one cast of Cone of Cold is doing and post it in the comments. But feels good. If we skip ahead a bit, yeah, so here's pretty much how I end the fight. You can see they're still all clustered right there. Just have to hit him with a Create Water again. And then let's see how Gale does on this next one. Evocation Wizard, so I don't have to worry about the AoE hitting my allies. There's a few left. I think I also hit him with a Chain Lightning or a Lightning Bolt to finish him off. Yeah, and that's it. So you can see, I think this is in round 3, and everyone's dead. I just have to kill the last stragglers of this fight. So that's a trick you can try on your own runs. And that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you try these builds in your own runs, let me know how they perform. And please do check out, if it interests you, the full recording of the run. You can post timestamps in the comments of your favorite fights for everyone else that comes after you. Alright guys, thanks again. I will catch you next time.